Understand the 3 levels
There's
of
a revelation I
fasting.
once shared sometime last year on this very platform, but I just want to share it again in case you missed it. I know there are so many people who are fasting right now. There are so many churches who are fasting. There are churches that do not begin a year without fasting. So there's a lot of fasting going around. And I think this message is relevant because of that. So this message is about fasting. I wish that you guys can get my books. Specifically, I wish you can get so I've got books. I've got 2 books. It's one book with 2 volumes. The volume 1, the title of my books is 15 Weeks of Heavenly Inspired Messages. So in volume 1, chapter 1 talks about fasting. You know, the difference between fasting and hunger strike. There are people who, so that chapter, it will assist you to understand fasting, and you will fast with power, fast with revelations. Anyway, what I want to share in this short video is what I shared sometime last year, where I was talking about the 3 levels of fasting. There are 3 levels of fasting. There's level 1 fasting, level 2 fasting, and level 3 fasting. What is to fast? When you fast is when you deny yourself of something. Is when you deny yourself of something. Fasting is when you deny yourself of something. So when you fast food, you are denying yourself food. Level 1 fasting is when you fast sin. Level 1 fasting is when a person fasts sin. What is to fast sin? To fast sin is to deny yourself of sin, is to deny your flesh of sin, is to deny your body of sin. One thing that is always clear and obvious that we know is that the flesh loves sin. The body loves sin. Our flesh loves sin. The flesh struggles to do what is right, but the flesh always wants to sin. That's why it's easy for someone to sin than to do the right thing, because it's so easy to sin, because the flesh is always eager to sin. The flesh is always eager to sin. And this is why Jesus said in I think it's in Matthew and in Mark, that's why he said it's important that you make it to heaven, but if your arm will cause you to sin, you will rather chop it off and not have it, and that will spare your life. If your leg, it causes you to sin. So he was mentioning body parts there. He was mentioning because sin is centered around the flesh. We sin with our parts of body, with our different parts of the body. Some sin in their minds, some sin in their lips, their mouth, their fingers, their hands, different body parts. So the flesh is like, it loves to feed on sin. And some people don't know that your number 1 enemy is not even the devil, but it's the flesh. It's the flesh. There's a revelation that I got from God about this a couple of years ago, because when I began to understand how cruel flesh is to us, because flesh makes it hard to live for God. It doesn't make it impossible. It makes it hard. Flesh makes it hard to worship God. Flesh makes it hard to live righteously, because the problem is the flesh. The problem is the flesh. This is why Jesus said in Matthew, when he was with his disciples at the Garden of Gethsemane, he said to them, "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. The spirit is willing to do the things of God. Is willing to worship, to read the word, to pray, to do this. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is just too weak. And the weakness of the flesh comes also because of sin. When someone sins, it's evidence that the flesh is still in control. The sin has not managed to be in control of that person's life. It is by grace that the spirit begins to, when the flesh dominates the spirit, your spirit, man's spirit, not the Holy Spirit, when the flesh dominates, when my flesh dominates my spirit, I will live in sin, and sin will always make sense to me. I will live in sin. I will drink that cup of sin without any remorse, without any shame, because my body or my flesh is still overpowering my spirit. But once I begin to get spiritual growth grows to a point where the spirit begins to dominate the flesh, and that's how I began to live in the spirit. That's how I begin to dominate. As long as flesh dominates in the life of a person, that means the spirit has got no say. Remember, you are a spirit in a body possessing a soul. So when your spirit is still overpowered by the flesh, there is no other way but to live a fleshly life, a life of sin. But when this is why I talk about spiritual growth all the time, because I know spiritual growth brings so many benefits. Okay, let's move. So level 1, fasting, fast sin. Level 2, fasting is to fast food, meaning to deny yourself of food. Level 3 fasting is in Isaiah 58. Level 3 fasting is when you fast the things that you have. You deny yourself of the things that you have, like you give to the poor, give your food to the poor, you share what you have, you break your bread, you take care of the needy. So the things that were supposed to be yours, that you're supposed to use them, your money, your this, you share it with the poor. That's level 3 fasting. Out of these three levels of fasting, the last two, they matter to God the most. You fasting sin. I mean, you fasting, there are people who try to fast food when they are still struggling to fast sin. You must be able to fast sin, meaning you must be able to deny yourself of sin before you can move on to the next level of denying yourself food. Because you can fast 40 days, 40 nights, meaning you can deny yourself food 40 days and 40 nights, but when you are still struggling when you still don't care about fasting sin, you will struggle. And it's important, people of God, it's important that we understand these things. So, Emmanuel, God with us, God be the glory.